You are told that wealth belongs to those who work the hardest. Few people ever dared to tell you the quieter truth. Across thousands of years, the men and women who accumulated extraordinary fortunes were not simply working harder than everyone else. They were seeing something that everyone else overlooked. They understood invisible rules. They recognized patterns hidden beneath markets, kingdoms, currencies, and human nature itself. Those patterns are still alive today. Welcome to this audiobook. Over the next journey, we will explore the timeless principles that quietly shape the fortunes of merchants, rulers, builders, philosophers, explorers, industrialists, and modern entrepreneurs. This is not financial advice. It is an exploration of history, psychology, discipline, and the enduring habits that have separated builders of wealth from those who spend their entire lives chasing it. You will discover why civilizations rose through commerce before they conquered with armies. You will understand why the richest people in every generation often appeared calm while everyone else panicked. You will see why the greatest fortunes were usually built long before the world noticed them. Most importantly, you will begin to recognize that the greatest investment you will ever control is not found in a stock exchange or a bank account. It is found in the way you think. Here is a sentence worth carrying with you through every chapter. Wealth is rarely created by money first. It is created by perspective. Before we begin, allow yourself one simple promise. Give this journey your full attention. If a single idea changes the way you see opportunity, then this time together may become one of the highest returning investments you ever make. Because history does not whisper its secrets to impatient people. It reveals them to those willing to listen. There is a strange silence inside every museum. People walk slowly past crowns, ancient coins, merchant ledgers, faded maps, and forgotten contracts. They admire them for a few moments before moving on to the next display. Very few stop long enough to ask the question that changes everything. How did these objects shape the lives of millions? A cracked clay tablet recording grain deliveries seems ordinary until you realize it represents one of humanity's earliest accounting systems. A weathered silver coin appears insignificant until you understand that entire kingdoms trusted its weight enough to build economies around it. A merchant's handwritten journal looks almost boring until you notice that every page records tiny decisions that eventually financed fleets capable of crossing oceans. History rarely announces where its greatest lessons are hiding. The loud stories belong to battles. The quiet stories belong to builders. Most school books teach us the names of conquerors. Far fewer teach us the names of the merchants who financed those conquests, the craftsmen who supplied them, the shipbuilders who transported them, or the families who quietly accumulated influence across generations while remaining almost invisible. Power often wears a crown. Wealth usually wears ordinary clothes. That distinction matters because many people spend their lives chasing appearances while ignoring foundations. Imagine standing in an ancient marketplace just before sunrise. The air is cool. Wooden stalls are opening. Farmers unload baskets of olives. Potters arrange fresh ceramics. Spice merchants unlock heavy chests filled with aromas carried across deserts and seas. Nothing looks extraordinary, yet every exchange that morning carries an invisible force. Trust. One merchant believes another will deliver next month. One family lends grain expecting repayment after harvest. One craftsman accepts payment today for work finished tomorrow. Without trust, every market collapses. Without trust, money itself becomes meaningless. The first great wealth secret was never gold, it was credibility. Long before digital payments, stock markets, or international banking systems, people discovered that a trustworthy reputation could travel farther than any caravan. The merchant known for honest measurements attracted customers without shouting. The lender known for fairness recovered more loans than the one ruled by fear. The builder known for quality received commissions before competitors even heard about the opportunity. Their reputation became an invisible currency. Thousands of years later, the technology has changed. Human psychology has not. Today, a recommendation can circle the planet in seconds. A damaged reputation can do the same. People still invest in confidence. Employers hire confidence. Customers buy confidence. Partners commit because of confidence. Even algorithms reward consistency because consistency signals trust. The ancient principle survived every technological revolution because it was never really about commerce. It was about human nature. Many people search endlessly for the perfect investment while neglecting the investment that influences every opportunity they will ever receive. Their character. Character compounds, just like money. Every promise kept earns invisible interest. Every shortcut unpaid eventually sends a bill. Ancient civilizations understood something modern culture often forgets. A reputation takes years to build, minutes to damage, and extraordinary discipline to restore. That truth frightened wise merchants far more than temporary financial losses. Money lost could often be earned again. Trust lost demanded an entirely different price. Think about your own life for a moment. Not your income, not your savings, not your possessions. Think about what people expect when they hear your name. Do they expect reliability, curiosity, integrity, generosity, calm under pressure, or uncertainty, delay, broken promises? The answer matters more than many realize because opportunity usually arrives disguised as another person's decision. Someone chooses who receives the contract. Someone chooses who joins the partnership. Someone chooses who leads the project. Someone chooses whose advice deserves attention. That decision often begins long before any interview or negotiation. It begins with reputation. History's richest families understood another quiet principle. They protected trust with greater care than luxury. Luxury could disappear. Trust generated new luxury. There is an old image worth holding in your mind. Picture two bridges crossing the same river. One bridge is decorated with marble, statues, and expensive carvings. The other appears plain, but was built with exceptional craftsmanship. Years pass. Storms arrive. Floodwaters rise. Which bridge continues serving travelers? Strength hides beneath appearances. The same is true for financial life. Many people polish appearances while neglecting structure. Ancient wealth builders reversed the order. They strengthened foundations first. Recognition came later, sometimes much later. In every era, crowds admired visible success. Wise builders admired invisible preparation. They understood that nobody applauds the countless evenings spent learning, planning, calculating, and improving. The applause comes after the foundation is already complete. By then, outsiders call it luck. History calls it preparation. Modern psychology offers language for something ancient civilizations simply observed. Human beings naturally seek immediate rewards. We enjoy praise today more than benefits arriving years from now. Our ancestors fought the same temptation. The difference was that successful merchants trained themselves to delay celebration until results became permanent. They viewed patience not as waiting, but as construction. Every disciplined choice placed another stone beneath a future no one else could yet imagine. That is why wealth often appears sudden from the outside. People witness the harvest. They rarely witness the seasons. If these ideas already feel different from what you expected, stay with them, because the greatest secret hidden inside history is not buried inside vaults or palaces. It is buried inside ordinary habits repeated for extraordinary lengths of time. And once you begin seeing those habits, it becomes impossible to look at money, success, or even your own future in quite the same way. The next lesson begins where every lasting fortune truly started, not with gold, not with opportunity, but with the way a single human being learned to see value where everyone else saw only the ordinary. Most people believe value is something that exists inside an object. Ancient builders understood something far more powerful. Value lives inside perception. A rough stone lying beside a road is almost worthless until a master sculptor sees the statue hidden inside it. A forgotten piece of land appears useless until someone notices the river that will one day carry trade. A struggling business seems destined to fail until another person recognizes that its customers are more valuable than its products. Nothing changed except the eyes that looked at it. That difference has created fortunes throughout history. When traders crossed deserts carrying silk, spices, salt, or precious metals, they were not simply transporting goods. They were transporting differences in perception. Something abundant in one kingdom became priceless in another. Profit was born in the distance between two understandings of value. That pattern has never disappeared. Today, the deserts have become digital networks. The caravans have become fiber optic cables. The marketplaces have become global. Yet fortunes still emerge wherever someone notices what others have failed to recognize. Every generation believes its opportunities are completely new. History smiles quietly, because while the tools evolve, human behavior remains astonishingly familiar. People chase excitement. Builders study reality. People rush toward headlines. Builders examine fundamentals. People ask what everyone is buying. Builders ask why anyone is buying it at all. There is an old story about a traveler who arrived in a village carrying nothing but seeds. The villagers laughed. Seeds seemed worthless compared to gold coins, livestock, or fine clothing. Months later, those same seeds had become orchards. Years later, they fed families. Decades later, they produced wealth for children who had not yet been born when the traveler first arrived. The seeds had never been cheap, only misunderstood. Real wealth often enters life disguised as something ordinary. Knowledge looks ordinary. Discipline looks ordinary. Relationships look ordinary. Learning a difficult skill appears ordinary. Reading another page when everyone else chooses distraction appears ordinary. The extraordinary result arrives only after enough ordinary moments have quietly accumulated. This is one reason history's greatest wealth builders rarely appeared dramatic during the years that mattered most. Their lives looked repetitive, almost boring. While others searched for shortcuts, they refined systems. While others celebrated quick victories, they improved small habits. While others demanded immediate proof, they accepted delayed rewards. The crowd saw routine. Time saw momentum. Momentum is one of the least appreciated forces in human life. A single drop of water seems powerless. Millions of drops reshape mountains. One conversation changes very little. Years of thoughtful conversations transform entire networks of trust. One investment rarely creates freedom. Decades of intelligent investing often do. One healthy decision changes almost nothing. Thousands reshape a lifetime. The ancient world respected momentum because nature demonstrated it everywhere. Trees did not rush. Rivers did not hurry. Seasons ignored human impatience. Everything meaningful unfolded through accumulation. Somehow, modern life convinced many people that lasting wealth should appear instantly. The expectation itself creates disappointment. A bamboo seed spends years developing roots beneath the surface before visible growth astonishes everyone around it. Those watching only the surface mistake patience for inactivity. They do not realize that invisible work always precedes visible expansion. Human potential follows the same law. There may be seasons in your own life where little seems to change. You study, you improve, you save, you develop new skills, you strengthen your character. From the outside, nothing appears remarkable. Inside, your roots are spreading. Never underestimate invisible progress. History almost always remembers visible success while forgetting the silent years that made it possible. Think about the cathedrals that still stand after centuries. Visitors admire stained glass, towering ceilings, and magnificent architecture. Very few pause to think about the foundations buried beneath the earth. No tourist photographs the stones that cannot be seen, yet without them, everything above collapses. Financial life follows exactly the same principle. Income is visible. Judgment is invisible. Luxury is visible. Discipline is invisible. Recognition is visible. Preparation is invisible. The invisible always supports the visible. Reverse that order, and collapse eventually follows. There is another pattern repeated across nearly every civilization that produced lasting prosperity. The wealthiest thinkers rarely asked, "How can I make more money?" Instead, they asked, "How can I become more valuable?" Notice the difference. Money depends on circumstances. Value depends largely on development. A person who becomes exceptionally useful rarely needs to spend a lifetime chasing opportunity. Opportunity begins searching for them. Consider the physician whose wisdom comforts frightened patients. The engineer who solves problems no one else can solve. The entrepreneur who removes frustration from millions of daily lives. The teacher whose lessons permanently reshape another person's future. The craft differs. The principle remains identical. They increase value before expecting rewards. Rewards become consequences, not goals. Many people reverse this equation. They chase income without increasing usefulness, recognition without contribution, status without substance. Eventually, reality corrects the imbalance. Reality is remarkably patient. It allows illusions to survive for surprisingly long periods, but never forever. Ancient merchants understood this through experience. If a trader repeatedly exaggerated quality, eventually, buyers disappeared. If measurements became dishonest, trust evaporated. If promises remained unfulfilled, reputation quietly collapsed. Markets became early teachers of accountability. Modern technology has changed speed, not truth. Today, dishonesty travels faster. So does excellence. One thoughtful product can reach millions. One careless decision can also reach millions. The ancient principle survives because people continue making decisions based on trust. There is another image worth carrying forward. Picture two blacksmiths working side by side. One produces 10 ordinary tools every day. The other spends twice as long crafting tools that rarely fail. At first, the faster craftsman appears more successful. Months pass. Years pass. Farmers begin recommending only one name. Travelers journey farther to buy from only one workshop. The slower craftsman eventually serves more customers with less effort. Quality became advertising long before advertising existed. This idea extends far beyond business. Your attention has quality. Your friendships have quality. Your thinking has quality. Even your daily questions determine the quality of your future. Ask shallow questions. Receive shallow answers. Ask enduring questions. Transform your life. Instead of asking, "How can I become rich quickly?" ask, "What kind of person naturally creates lasting wealth?" That single shift changes the direction of thought. Instead of hunting outcomes, you begin building identity. Identity produces habits. Habits produce results. Results produce reputation. Reputation attracts opportunity. Opportunity compounds into freedom. Notice how money enters the story surprisingly late. That is precisely why history's greatest fortunes often belong to people who became obsessed with mastery before they became obsessed with wealth. Money followed competence like a shadow follows light. Not instantly, not effortlessly, but consistently. If this thought resonates with you, take a quiet moment to reflect on it after today's listening. Share in the comments one skill, one habit, or one quality you want to strengthen over the coming year. Writing it down transforms a passing thought into a personal commitment, and you may encourage someone else to begin their own journey simply by sharing your intention. Because the next lesson may be the most misunderstood of all. The greatest fortunes in history were not built merely by earning more. They were built by understanding the profound difference between owning today and creating tomorrow. One of the oldest mistakes in the history of wealth is confusing possession with creation. Possession feels satisfying because it is visible. Creation often feels uncomfortable because it demands patience. A king may inherit a treasury overflowing with gold, yet lose it within a generation. A merchant may begin with almost nothing, yet quietly build an empire whose influence outlives entire kingdoms. History records both stories again and again. The difference rarely begins with luck. It begins with the question each person asks every morning. What can I consume today, or what can I create today? Creation is a force unlike any other. When a farmer plants a vineyard, the first harvest is small. The vines appear fragile against the vastness of the land. A stranger passing by might see only empty rows and wasted effort. But the farmer sees years instead of days. He waters trees that will one day provide shade he may never personally enjoy. He accepts seasons that offer no visible reward because he understands something impatience can never understand. The future belongs to those willing to invest in people they have not yet become. That same principle echoes through every enduring fortune. The greatest shipbuilders never thought only about the vessel resting in their workshop. They imagined ports they had never visited, storms they had never encountered, and generations of sailors who would trust the strength of wood they carefully selected years before. The greatest architects designed buildings knowing they might never witness their completion. The greatest teachers planted ideas knowing their students would carry them farther than they themselves ever could. Creation stretches beyond the limits of one lifetime. Consumption never does. Modern culture quietly encourages the opposite. It rewards appearances. It celebrates immediate gratification. Every day, countless voices whisper the same message: buy more, display more, upgrade more, compare more. Very few voices ask a different question. What are you building that will still matter 10 years from now? That question can change the direction of an entire life, because every hour contains a choice. You can spend it creating an asset or consuming someone else's. An asset is not only financial. A healthy body is an asset. A trustworthy reputation is an asset. A disciplined mind is an asset. Deep knowledge is an asset. Meaningful friendships are assets. The ability to remain calm while others panic is one of the rarest assets of all. These invisible forms of wealth often produce financial wealth later. Ancient civilizations recognized this instinctively. Young apprentices spent years mastering a single craft before expecting significant rewards. Today, many people hope for extraordinary outcomes before mastering ordinary skills. Expectation has accelerated, human development has not. There is a beautiful irony hidden inside history. The people who became obsessed with excellence often became wealthy. The people obsessed only with wealth frequently abandoned excellence. One pursued value. The other pursued symbols. Symbols fade. Value multiplies. Imagine walking through an ancient marketplace once more. Hundreds of traders compete for attention. Voices rise above the crowd. Prices are negotiated. Customers hesitate. One merchant remains surprisingly calm. He does not shout louder. He does not chase every passerby. He simply offers products so reliable that returning customers seek him out without persuasion. Years later, newcomers believe his success happened because of good fortune. They never witnessed the years he spent improving quality while others competed only on price. There is a quiet confidence that comes from creating genuine value. It removes desperation. Desperation is expensive. People sense it in negotiations. Employers sense it in interviews. Investors sense it in markets. Even children recognize it in adults. Calm, on the other hand, often comes from preparation. Preparation creates options. Options create freedom. Freedom changes decisions. History's wealthiest thinkers understood that freedom was the real treasure. Money was simply one tool for protecting it. Freedom to choose meaningful work. Freedom to decline dishonest opportunities. Freedom to care for family without constant fear. Freedom to continue learning. Freedom to remain patient when everyone else rushed. When you begin seeing wealth through the lens of freedom instead of possessions, something remarkable happens. Your priorities begin rearranging themselves. A flashy purchase loses some of its attraction. A new skill gains importance. An unnecessary expense becomes visible. An investment in knowledge suddenly appears far more exciting than it once did. Nothing external changed. Only your definition of wealth evolved. This transformation has repeated itself throughout every age. The philosopher who valued wisdom above comfort. The inventor who invested years solving one difficult problem. The entrepreneur who quietly reinvested profits while competitors celebrated short-term victories. The family that chose education over extravagance generation after generation. Different centuries, different languages, the same invisible principle: creation before consumption. One of the greatest misunderstandings about prosperity is the belief that sacrifice means losing something. In reality, wise sacrifice is often an exchange. You exchange comfort now for capability later, entertainment now for understanding later, impulse now for independence later. You are not giving something away. You are trading for something greater. Ancient merchants understood this every time they loaded ships onto uncertain seas. The cargo represented years of labor. Storms might destroy everything. Pirates might appear. Markets might change. Yet they sailed anyway, because remaining safely in the harbor guaranteed something even worse: stagnation. There is risk in every meaningful pursuit. But there is also risk in standing still. The question is never whether life contains uncertainty. The question is which uncertainty offers the greater possibility for growth. Many people fear investing in themselves because results cannot be measured immediately. Learning a language feels slow. Building a business feels uncertain. Developing emotional discipline produces no instant applause. Saving consistently appears insignificant month after month. Yet history reminds us that the most powerful forces are often almost invisible while they are growing. A river does not carve stone through violence. It carves stone through persistence. Drops become streams. Streams become rivers. Rivers reshape continents. The same law governs character. A single honest decision seems small. Repeated thousands of times, honesty becomes identity. A single wise investment appears ordinary. Repeated consistently across decades, wisdom transforms family histories. An hour of reading feels almost insignificant. Years later, accumulated knowledge allows one person to recognize opportunities invisible to everyone else. Nothing magical occurred, only accumulation. This is why comparing your beginning to someone else's middle is so dangerous. You see their harvest. You cannot see the countless mornings they chose discipline over distraction. You see the finished cathedral. You do not see the generations that patiently placed each stone. You see financial freedom. You do not see the invisible years spent building the habits capable of sustaining it. Comparison steals perspective because it edits out the process. History never does. History rewards those willing to honor the process. Perhaps there is an area of your own life where you have been measuring progress too quickly. Maybe you have been learning a skill, saving for a goal, building a business, repairing relationships, strengthening your health. It is easy to believe nothing is happening when visible results arrive slowly. But the deepest transformations almost always begin beneath the surface. Just as roots strengthen before branches rise toward the sky, your future is often being built during seasons when nobody notices your effort, including you. And there is one more ancient lesson waiting just beyond this realization. It is the lesson that separated temporary fortunes from wealth that survived generations. It has nothing to do with earning, nothing to do with spending, everything to do with mastering the one resource every emperor, merchant, inventor, and laborer received in time has always been the only currency that every human being receives in perfect equality. No emperor ever negotiated for an extra hour. No merchant ever purchased another sunrise. No philosopher ever persuaded the seasons to pause. The wealthiest person alive and the poorest child born into hardship both awaken each morning with the same invisible deposit. 24 hours. From that moment forward, equality quietly disappears. Not because time changes, because decisions do. Ancient civilizations understood this truth with remarkable clarity. Long before clocks measured seconds with astonishing precision, people measured life by harvests, winters, tides, and stars. They recognized that wasting a season could not be repaired simply by wishing for another. A farmer who ignored spring could not negotiate with autumn. Nature accepted no excuses. Neither does life. One of the greatest illusions of youth is believing there will always be more time. One of the greatest gifts of maturity is realizing there may not be. That realization is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create clarity. When you begin treating time as your greatest asset, every ordinary decision starts asking a different question. Is this moving me toward the life I hope to build, or quietly carrying me away from it? The answer is rarely dramatic. It hides inside moments so small they almost escape attention. 10 minutes scrolling without purpose. An evening spent learning instead of complaining. A conversation that deepens trust. A promise kept despite inconvenience. A book opened while others choose distraction. Tiny decisions, massive consequences. History's wealthiest builders rarely possessed extraordinary days. They simply refused to waste ordinary ones. There is an old image that deserves a place in your memory. Imagine two travelers beginning the same journey. Both leave at sunrise. Both carry similar supplies. Both dream of reaching the same distant city. The first traveler walks with intention. Every step is chosen. Every stop has purpose. The second wanders wherever curiosity pulls him. He rests whenever comfort calls. He changes direction whenever something more entertaining appears. After many months, they no longer resemble each other. The distance between them was never created by one giant decision. It was created by thousands of tiny ones. Life works exactly the same way. People often search for the single breakthrough that will transform everything overnight. History suggests something quieter. Great lives are usually constructed through ordinary excellence repeated until it becomes identity. Identity is more powerful than motivation. Motivation visits. Identity stays. A person who believes, "I am someone who learns," does not need endless inspiration to open another book. A person who believes, "I keep my word," does not debate every promise. A person who believes, "I build before I celebrate," naturally chooses creation over distraction. The ancient wealth secret was never simply about accumulating resources. It was about becoming the kind of person capable of protecting and multiplying them. Because money amplifies character. It does not replace it. Give discipline more resources, and discipline often creates opportunity. Give recklessness more resources, and recklessness often creates larger mistakes. The money changed. The character did not. That is why wise mentors throughout history invested enormous energy shaping judgment before expanding wealth. They understood a dangerous truth. Success arrives much faster than wisdom for many people. When that happens, fortune becomes fragile. Picture an experienced ship captain preparing for a long voyage. Before leaving the harbor, he does not spend his time celebrating the destination. He inspects ropes, he studies weather, he repairs weak boards, he checks supplies. To an impatient observer, this preparation appears slow, even unnecessary. But storms never negotiate with optimism. Preparation is how wisdom speaks before difficulty arrives. Financial life follows exactly the same pattern. The strongest balance sheet cannot compensate for careless judgment. The highest income cannot permanently outrun wasteful habits. The greatest opportunity cannot rescue someone who repeatedly ignores discipline. Ancient merchants often taught their children by allowing them to manage very small amounts of money long before trusting them with larger responsibilities. The lesson was never about coins. It was about character. Handle little things wisely, greater things become possible. Ignore little things. Greater opportunities quietly disappear. This principle extends beyond finance. Handle small commitments faithfully. People trust you with larger ones. Care for your health consistently. Your energy expands. Protect your attention. Your thinking becomes clearer. Respect your time. Others begin respecting it too. Everything compounds, not only investments. Habits compound. Conversations compound. Integrity compounds. Neglect compounds as well. That is why seemingly insignificant choices deserve extraordinary respect. Every repeated action casts a vote for the person you are becoming. The future is not built only by dreams. It is built by repeated evidence. Imagine a sculptor standing before an enormous block of marble. A visitor watches for 5 minutes and sees almost nothing change. Another visitor returns 1 year later and discovers a masterpiece. The sculpture did not appear during the final day. It appeared through thousands of careful strikes too small to appreciate individually. Your future follows the same rhythm. One workout, one page, one difficult conversation, one wise financial decision, one unnecessary purchase avoided, 1 hour invested instead of consumed. None seem life-changing. Together, they become destiny. This explains why impatience has quietly destroyed countless opportunities throughout history. People abandon the process because they cannot yet see the outcome. They dig wells until the work becomes difficult, then begin another somewhere else. Years later, they possess many shallow holes and no water. The patient builder keeps digging. Depth eventually reveals what constant change never can. There is another truth hidden inside time that many people overlook. Every season teaches something different. There are seasons for learning, seasons for earning, seasons for rebuilding, seasons for waiting, seasons for leading. Wisdom is knowing which season you are living rather than demanding that every season produce the same fruit. Winter is not a failed spring. It serves another purpose. Likewise, periods of struggle are not always signs that you are moving in the wrong direction. Sometimes they are strengthening qualities that prosperity alone could never develop. Humility, patience, resilience, discernment, gratitude. These qualities rarely attract headlines, yet history repeatedly shows that they quietly supported many of the world's most enduring fortunes. The people who survived economic collapse, political upheaval, failed ventures, and personal disappointment often shared one remarkable trait. They refused to let temporary circumstances define permanent identity. Markets changed, governments changed, currencies changed. Technology changed, their commitment to learning did not. Their willingness to adapt did not. Their belief that value could always be created did not. That belief became their greatest insurance policy, because knowledge travels where possessions cannot. Discipline survives losses that money cannot prevent. Character rebuilds what circumstance may temporarily destroy. Perhaps this is why the oldest wisdom traditions placed such enormous emphasis on mastering oneself before attempting to master the world. The person who governs their own impulses is difficult to manipulate. The person who understands their own fears is difficult to intimidate. The person who knows what truly matters is difficult to distract. And the person who treats time as sacred slowly discovers that every faithful day becomes another stone laid beneath a future that once seemed impossibly distant. The next lesson begins with a question that transformed not only fortunes, but entire civilizations. It is a question so simple that many overlook it. Yet those who answered it wisely often changed the course of history without ever realizing it. Every civilization that endured eventually learned the same lesson. The future belongs to those who ask better questions. Not louder questions, not easier questions, better ones. A ruler asks, how do I keep power? A statesman asks, how do I build stability that survives after I am gone? A merchant asks, how do I sell this shipment? A builder asks, how do I become the first person people think of when they need this service? A worker asks, how can I earn more this month? A creator asks, how can I become so valuable that opportunities naturally seek me out? The quality of a life often rises to meet the quality of its questions. History is filled with examples of people who possessed fewer resources than their competitors, but asked wiser questions. Those questions reshaped industries, cities, and sometimes entire nations. Centuries ago, while many traders competed over familiar routes, a few asked a dangerous question. What if there is another way? That single question inspired voyages across unknown oceans. Some expeditions failed, some ships never returned, but those who eventually discovered new trade routes altered the balance of wealth for generations. They were not merely brave. They were curious enough to doubt accepted limits. Curiosity has always been one of wealth's quiet companions. Not idle curiosity, purposeful curiosity, the kind that studies instead of assuming, the kind that listens before speaking, the kind that asks why something works instead of simply accepting that it does. Children naturally possess this gift. They ask endless questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do leaves fall? Why do people work? Why does money matter? Over time, many adults slowly trade curiosity for certainty. They stop questioning. They begin repeating. Their routines become familiar. Their thinking becomes predictable. Their growth quietly slows. The ancient wealth builders fought against this tendency. Many of history's greatest merchants were also relentless students. They studied geography because trade depended on it. They learned languages because relationships depended on it. They observed politics because markets responded to it. They paid attention to weather because harvests depended on it. Knowledge was never collected simply to appear intelligent. Knowledge reduced uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty improved decisions. Improved decisions accumulated into prosperity. That chain still exists. The world today produces more information in a single day than many civilizations generated across centuries. Yet, information alone has never created wisdom. There is an important difference. Information tells you what happened. Wisdom helps you understand why. Information tells you what people are buying. Wisdom asks whether the demand will still exist 10 years from now. Information announces trends. Wisdom studies human nature beneath those trends. Human nature changes very slowly. Technology changes almost daily. That is why history remains such a remarkable teacher. It reminds us that beneath every new invention stands an old human desire. People still seek security. They still seek belonging. They still seek recognition. They still seek meaning. The tools evolve, the motivations remain astonishingly familiar. When you understand enduring motivations, temporary trends become easier to interpret. Imagine standing inside an ancient library. Shelves stretch farther than you can see. Thousands of scrolls surround you. Some describe agriculture, others discuss mathematics. Some explore philosophy. Others record commercial agreements from centuries earlier. One visitor enters searching only for confirmation of what he already believes. Another enters hoping to discover where he may be wrong. Which visitor leaves richer? The second. Always the second. Because certainty closes doors. Humility opens them. One of the greatest barriers to wealth has never been lack of intelligence. It has been the belief that nothing more needs to be learned. History repeatedly humbled those who believed they had mastered everything. Empires collapsed. Businesses disappeared. Entire industries transformed. Meanwhile, lifelong learners quietly adapted. They changed before change became unavoidable. That ability to adapt may be one of the greatest financial advantages any person can possess. The strongest tree is not always the one with the hardest wood. Often it is the one capable of bending without breaking. Flexibility is not weakness. It is intelligent resilience. Think about every major transformation humanity has experienced. Agriculture replaced hunting for many societies. Writing transformed memory. Printing transformed education. Steam transformed industry. Electricity transformed cities. Computers transformed communication. Artificial intelligence is transforming knowledge work before our eyes. Every transition created fear. Every transition also created opportunity. The people who flourished were rarely those who denied change. They were the ones who asked how to grow with it. That question matters today more than ever, because the pace of change is accelerating. The temptation is to feel overwhelmed. The wiser response is to become more adaptable. Adaptability begins with humility. Humility allows learning. Learning creates competence. Competence builds confidence. Confidence supports wise action. Notice once again that confidence arrives near the end of the process. Modern culture often tries to place it at the beginning. Real confidence is earned. It grows from repeated evidence that you can face uncertainty without surrendering to fear. There is another lesson hidden inside the lives of history's wealthiest builders. They protected their attention as carefully as they protected their treasure. Attention determines thought. Thought determines decisions. Decisions determine direction. Direction determines destiny. If someone constantly controls your attention, they slowly influence your future. This is why wise people throughout history deliberately created periods of silence, not because they disliked the world, because they needed space to think independently. The busiest marketplace was rarely the best place to make life's greatest decisions. Neither is endless distraction. Some of your most valuable financial decisions will not emerge from constant activity. They will emerge from quiet reflection, from stepping away long enough to see clearly. Many fortunes have been preserved by a single afternoon of thoughtful consideration. Many have been destroyed by 5 minutes of emotional impulse. Speed impresses crowds. Clarity protects builders. There is tremendous strength in refusing to react immediately. When everyone else rushes, pause. When everyone else panics, observe. When everyone else celebrates without questioning, investigate. Patience is not passive. It is disciplined observation. Imagine an experienced chess master watching a board. A beginner sees pieces. The master sees patterns. The beginner reacts to the current move. The master anticipates several moves ahead. The board is identical. The vision is different. Financial life rewards those who learn to see patterns instead of isolated events. One successful month proves very little. Years of consistent judgment reveal character. One lucky investment means little. A lifetime of thoughtful allocation reveals wisdom. One failure rarely defines a person. Repeated refusal to learn from failure often does. Perhaps the greatest question you can ask yourself today is surprisingly simple. What patterns am I creating? Not what goals you have written. Not what dreams you hope to achieve. What patterns are quietly shaping your future every single week? Because patterns become habits. Habits become identity. Identity becomes legacy. And legacy is where the ancient wealth secret reaches its deepest meaning. The richest people history remembers were not always those who accumulated the largest fortunes. Many names attached to enormous wealth have already been forgotten. The individuals who truly changed history built something larger than personal comfort. They created institutions, ideas, communities, knowledge, opportunities that continued serving others long after their own lives ended. That is the highest form of wealth. Not simply possessing abundance, but becoming a source from which abundance continues to flow. And before anyone reaches that destination, they must first overcome one invisible obstacle that has quietly limited human potential since the earliest marketplaces opened beneath the morning sun. It is not lack of talent. It is not lack of opportunity. It is something far more subtle. Something that often disguises itself as common sense while silently stealing the future one comfortable decision at a time. Comfort has defeated more fortunes than catastrophe ever could. That may sound strange at first. After all, comfort feels harmless. It feels earned. It feels safe. But history tells a different story. Kingdoms rarely collapsed during the years they struggled to survive. They often weakened after decades of abundance. Families rarely lost their values while rebuilding from hardship. They often forgot them after generations of prosperity. Businesses seldom failed because they lacked early determination. Many failed because success slowly replaced discipline with complacency. Comfort is dangerous precisely because it rarely announces itself as danger. It arrives quietly. One unnecessary delay. One excuse that sounds reasonable. One habit postponed until tomorrow. One promise to begin next week instead of today. None of these decisions appear significant on their own. Together, they quietly redirect an entire life. Imagine an experienced blacksmith who spends decades mastering his craft. Every blade leaving his workshop carries remarkable quality. People travel from distant towns because they trust his work. Eventually, success arrives. Orders increase. His reputation grows. He becomes respected. Then one day, he decides that one small shortcut will save a little time. Nobody notices. The next week, another shortcut follows. Then another. Years later, customers quietly stop returning. The blacksmith blames changing markets. He blames younger competitors. He blames bad luck. Rarely does he recognize that excellence was not stolen from him. It was surrendered one comfortable decision at a time. This pattern extends far beyond craftsmanship. A healthy body rarely becomes unhealthy overnight. Financial stability rarely disappears in a single afternoon. Strong relationships seldom collapse because of one conversation. Decline usually whispers before it shouts. The ancient world understood this through nature. Fields left unattended slowly welcomed weeds. Roofs ignored for years eventually leaked. Ships neglected in peaceful weather often failed during storms. Maintenance was never optional. It was the hidden price of longevity. The same law governs character. Discipline is not something you achieve once. It is something you renew. Integrity is not protected by yesterday's honesty. It is protected by today's choices. Wisdom is not preserved by yesterday's learning. It survives through continual curiosity. Many people treat success as a finish line. History treats it as the beginning of greater responsibility. This explains why some fortunes survive centuries while others vanish within a single generation. The first generation often sacrifices comfort to create opportunity. The second enjoys the rewards while remembering the struggle. The third sometimes inherits abundance without understanding the discipline that created it. Eventually, comfort replaces gratitude, consumption replaces creation, entitlement replaces stewardship. The cycle begins again. Wise families recognized this danger long before economists described it. They taught children not merely how to inherit wealth, but how to deserve responsibility. Stories around evening fires often mattered more than treasure stored in vaults. Because values outlive valuables. A child who learns wisdom can rebuild lost wealth. A child who inherits wealth without wisdom may struggle to preserve either. This principle applies even if your inheritance contains little money. Perhaps your greatest inheritance was resilience. Perhaps it was honesty. Perhaps it was the example of parents who worked with dignity despite difficult circumstances. Those gifts cannot be measured on a financial statement, yet they often produce greater returns than money alone. One conversation between generations can shape a lifetime. Imagine an elderly merchant nearing the end of his life. His warehouses are full. His accounts are healthy. His family gathers expecting instructions about property, gold, and contracts. Instead, he says something unexpected. Everything you see can disappear. Learn the habits that created it. Those cannot be stolen. That advice echoes across centuries. Markets rise and fall. Currencies strengthen and weaken. Technologies replace one another. But the ability to observe carefully, think independently, remain disciplined, and treat people fairly continues creating opportunity regardless of the century. That is why the ancient wealth secret has never truly been about money. Money is simply one expression of deeper principles. Those principles are portable. They travel wherever you go. No economic crisis can erase your capacity to learn. No market correction can confiscate your integrity. No recession can prevent you from becoming more valuable tomorrow than you are today. These truths create a remarkable kind of confidence. Not the loud confidence that seeks attention, the quiet confidence that remains steady, even when circumstances become uncertain. History's greatest builders possessed this calm. They understood that external events would always fluctuate. Harvests varied, governments changed, wars interrupted trade, storms delayed ships. Yet beneath those changing conditions stood something stable, their own judgment. When your greatest asset becomes the quality of your thinking rather than the size of your possessions, fear begins losing much of its power, because you trust yourself more than the circumstances. That trust cannot be purchased overnight. It is earned. Every difficult decision faced honestly strengthens it. Every challenge overcome patiently deepens it. Every promise kept quietly reinforces it. Eventually, you begin carrying wealth before your bank account reflects it. People notice something different. They cannot always explain it. You are less hurried, less reactive, more deliberate. You listen longer. You choose words carefully. You spend intentionally. You invest thoughtfully. You become increasingly difficult to manipulate because your decisions no longer depend on temporary emotion. This is one reason truly wise people often appear remarkably calm. Calm is frequently misunderstood as lack of ambition. In reality, calm often comes from preparation. The person who has studied deeply rarely needs to panic when uncertainty arrives. The captain who maintained the ship throughout peaceful seasons does not fear every dark cloud on the horizon. Preparation creates peace. There is a profound difference between being comfortable and being at peace. Comfort depends on circumstances. Peace depends on character. Comfort disappears when conditions change. Character travels with you everywhere. That distinction explains why some people remain hopeful after enormous losses, while others feel anxious despite enormous wealth. One possesses resources, the other possesses resilience. If forced to choose only one, history strongly suggests choosing resilience, because resilience repeatedly rebuilds resources. The opposite is far less certain. Perhaps there is an area of your own life where comfort has quietly replaced growth. Not through laziness, simply through familiarity. You no longer ask difficult questions. You no longer challenge old assumptions. You no longer practice with the same intensity that once defined you. This realization is not meant to create guilt. It is an invitation. Growth always begins with honest observation. The remarkable thing about discipline is that it returns quickly to those willing to welcome it back. You do not need a new life tomorrow morning. You need one better decision, then another, then another. History rarely changes because of one dramatic moment. It changes because ordinary people repeatedly choose principles over impulses until those principles reshape generations. And that leads us to, perhaps, the most overlooked secret of all. The greatest wealth builders did not merely understand markets, they understood people. Because every fortune, every enterprise, every kingdom, every partnership, and every lasting legacy has always rested upon one invisible foundation, the quality of human relationships. No civilization has ever become prosperous in complete isolation. The image of the lone genius creating immense wealth entirely by themselves is one of history's most attractive myths. Reality has always been different. Every meaningful fortune has rested upon countless relationships, some visible, most invisible. The merchant depended on farmers who grew the harvest. The farmer depended on blacksmiths who forged tools. The blacksmith depended on miners who extracted ore. The miners depended on builders who reinforced tunnels. Even kings depended upon people whose names never appeared in history books. Wealth has always been a network before it becomes a number. This is one reason ancient trade routes became far more valuable than roads alone. They connected trust. A road without trustworthy people was merely dirt stretching across the landscape. A trusted network transformed that same road into opportunity. Today, those roads have become digital. You can communicate across continents within seconds. You can meet collaborators from cultures your ancestors could scarcely imagine. Technology has expanded connection. It has not replaced trust. In fact, trust may be more valuable now than ever before. When choices are endless, people return to those they trust. When information overwhelms, they seek voices they believe. When uncertainty rises, they look for character before promises. Trust has become the rarest form of efficiency. It eliminates unnecessary doubt. Imagine two merchants opening their shops side by side every morning. One negotiates aggressively over every transaction. Every conversation feels like a battle. Customers leave wondering whether they paid too much. The other merchant seeks something different. He wants customers who return year after year. He explains honestly. He admits when another product would better serve someone's needs. He refuses quick profits that damage long relationships. At the end of 1 week, the first merchant appears more successful. At the end of 20 years, the second has built something far larger. Because trust compounds just as surely as money. Every satisfied customer quietly introduces another. Every fulfilled promise creates another opportunity no advertisement could purchase. History repeatedly demonstrates that relationships are among the few assets capable of appreciating without limit. Money invested wisely grows. Trust invested wisely grows as well. And unlike money, trust often continues producing value in ways impossible to calculate. One introduction changes a career. One conversation creates a partnership. One act of generosity inspires lifelong loyalty. One mentor recognizes potential before anyone else does. These moments rarely appear on financial statements, yet they often shape them. Consider how knowledge moved through ancient civilizations. Before printing presses, before universities as we know them today, wisdom traveled from person to person. Master craftsmen trained apprentices. Experienced navigators guided younger sailors. Merchants shared lessons with sons and daughters during long journeys. The greatest inheritance was often not property. It was perspective. A single piece of timely advice could save years of costly mistakes. A trusted mentor could shorten a journey that otherwise might consume decades. This remains true today. One meaningful conversation may redirect your future more profoundly than years of isolated effort. Yet many people approach relationships with a hidden calculation. What can this person give me? The ancient wealth builders often reverse the question. How can I become someone whose presence genuinely improves another person's life? Notice the difference. The first approach extracts. The second contributes. Extraction may create temporary gain. Contribution creates enduring influence. People remember how you made them feel long after they forget specific words. Did they leave your presence encouraged, respected, listened to, inspired to think differently? Or did every interaction revolve around your own needs? Influence grows where genuine interest lives. The greatest negotiators in history were often extraordinary listeners. The greatest leaders asked thoughtful questions before offering opinions. The greatest teachers remained lifelong students. There is tremendous strength in making another person feel fully heard. It requires patience. It requires humility. Most importantly, it requires curiosity. Curiosity once again reveals itself as one of history's quiet wealth builders. Not only curiosity about markets, curiosity about people. Why do they hope? Why do they fear? What problem keeps them awake at night? What future are they trying to build? The more deeply you understand human needs, the more effectively you can create value. Business, leadership, teaching, medicine, engineering, art, and entrepreneurship all ultimately revolve around solving human problems. The better you understand people, the more meaningful your solutions become. Ancient marketplaces thrived because merchants paid close attention. They noticed changing harvests. They recognized shifting preferences. They adapted before competitors realized circumstances had changed. Observation became advantage. Today, observation remains equally powerful. Most people hear words. Few notice emotions. Most notice results. Few study the habits producing those results. Most see confidence. Few recognize the years of uncertainty that confidence quietly survived. Learning to observe deeply transforms relationships. It also transforms decision-making. A wise investor studies management before studying numbers. A thoughtful employer studies character before credentials. A lasting friendship grows through shared values more than shared interests. Appearances introduce people. Character determines whether they remain. One ancient proverb suggests that iron sharpens iron. The image is beautiful because sharpening is not always comfortable. The strongest relationships often challenge us to become better. They encourage honesty instead of flattery, growth instead of complacency, responsibility instead of excuses. Pay close attention to the people whose presence quietly raises your standards. They are among the greatest investments life will ever offer. Likewise, strive to become that person for someone else. History's richest individuals often served as connectors. They introduced talented people to one another. They created opportunities instead of guarding them. Surprisingly, generosity frequently expanded their influence rather than diminishing it. Scarcity says there is never enough. Abundance understands that helping capable people often creates possibilities impossible to achieve alone. This does not mean trusting everyone blindly. Wisdom requires discernment. History offers countless examples of deception. Trust should be generous. Naivety should not. The ancient merchant verified measurements. The experienced sailor inspected every rope before departure. The wise ruler listened to multiple advisors before making difficult decisions. Trust and verification have always worked together. One without the other eventually becomes fragile. As your understanding deepens, another realization begins to emerge. Perhaps wealth has never truly been about collecting more than everyone else. Perhaps it has always been about becoming someone capable of creating more than they consume, creating more value, more wisdom, more stability, more opportunity, more hope. Money becomes one reflection of that process, not the process itself. Because in the end, the names history remembers most warmly are rarely those who simply possessed immense fortunes. They are the people whose lives became foundations upon which countless others were able to build. And once you understand that, one final ancient secret begins to reveal itself. It is the secret that transforms wealth from a destination into a responsibility, and success from something you own into something you pass forward. The highest form of wealth has never been measured by what remains in your possession when life ends. It has always been measured by what continues to grow because you lived. This idea appears again and again across civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and centuries. The wisest builders eventually reached a moment when accumulating more ceased to be the primary goal. Instead, they began asking a different question. What will outlive me? Some planted forests whose shade they would never enjoy. Some founded schools that educated generations they would never meet. Some established trading principles so fair that their family names remained respected long after every coin they earned had changed hands countless times. Others invested in children, apprentices, communities, inventions, or ideas whose greatest impact unfolded decades later. Their wealth became a bridge instead of a destination. This is perhaps the most misunderstood transformation in the entire journey toward prosperity. Many people believe that wealth grants purpose. History suggests the opposite. Purpose gives direction to wealth. Without purpose, abundance often becomes excess. With purpose, even modest resources become remarkably powerful. Imagine standing beside an ancient stone bridge stretching across a wide river. Travelers cross safely every day. Merchants transport food. Families reunite. Children laugh as they run across the worn stones. No one stops to praise the engineer who designed it centuries earlier. His name has faded. His work remains. That is legacy. Legacy rarely demands recognition. It quietly continues serving. In many ways, money behaves exactly the same. Money sitting still slowly loses meaning. Money placed in service of something worthwhile continues creating value long after its original owner is gone. The same principle applies to knowledge. A lesson shared wisely can echo through generations. One conversation between a parent and child may alter the direction of an entire family. One teacher who believes in a struggling student may unknowingly influence thousands of future lives through that student's work. Influence expands in ways no balance sheet can fully record. This realization changes how you define success. Instead of asking how much you can gather, you begin asking how much good your abilities can create. Instead of measuring your worth only by income, you measure it by usefulness. Instead of fearing competition, you focus on contribution. Because contribution has an extraordinary quality. It creates meaning. Meaning gives endurance to effort. A person chasing only money often grows tired once money arrives. A person serving a meaningful purpose continues growing because the destination keeps expanding. Ancient craftsmen understood this deeply. The finest builders signed very few of their creations. Their satisfaction came from excellence itself. They believed that every carefully carved beam, every precisely cut stone, every perfectly balanced arch reflected something greater than personal recognition. Their work became a conversation with the future. Perhaps your own work deserves to become that kind of conversation. Whether you lead a company, teach a classroom, care for a family, design software, repair machines, write stories, heal patients, grow food, or build something entirely new, every day offers an opportunity to leave the world slightly stronger than you found it. That is wealth in its most enduring form. Not because it ignores financial success, because it places financial success inside a larger purpose. History quietly rewards those who think this way. People naturally gather around builders, around problem solvers, around those who create stability instead of confusion, around those whose words match their actions. Consistency becomes magnetic. Integrity becomes memorable. Generosity becomes influential. And over years, sometimes over generations, These qualities produce something more valuable than temporary prosperity. They produce trust that survives absence. There is a remarkable difference between being admired and being relied upon. Admiration often depends upon achievement. Reliability depends upon character. Achievements may inspire people briefly. Character sustains them. The greatest fortunes were often entrusted to people who first demonstrated reliability in much smaller matters. They honored simple commitments. They respected other people's time. They admitted mistakes instead of hiding them. They continued learning even after becoming successful. Success did not convince them they had arrived. It reminded them that greater responsibility had begun. Responsibility is a word that modern culture sometimes avoids because it sounds heavy. History viewed it differently. Responsibility was privilege. To be trusted with resources meant someone believed you could transform them into something better. Whether those resources were money, knowledge, influence, opportunity, or simply another person's confidence, stewardship became the highest expression of maturity. Think of a gardener entrusted with an extraordinary estate. He does not own the seasons. He cannot command the rain. He cannot prevent every storm. But he can prepare the soil. He can remove weeds. He can plant carefully. He can protect young trees while they are still fragile. Over time, visitors admire the flourishing landscape. Few recognize that every beautiful garden is really thousands of ordinary acts of faithful care. Your future resembles that garden. Every habit plants something, every decision waters something, every repeated thought strengthens something. The question is not whether you are cultivating a future. You already are. The only question is what kind. Perhaps this is why history's richest minds spent so much time reflecting before acting. Reflection sharpens direction. Direction multiplies effort. Effort repeated consistently becomes achievement. Achievement guided by wisdom becomes legacy. Take a quiet moment now and consider the invisible investments you're making every single day. What are you teaching the people around you without realizing it? What example are your habits setting? If someone copied your daily routine for the next 10 years, where would it lead them? These questions are more valuable than they first appear because every life teaches something. Even silence teaches, even delay teaches, even excuses teach. The choice is whether your life teaches courage or hesitation, discipline or distraction, creation or consumption, hope or resignation. No one becomes a perfect example. History contains no flawless builders. Every remarkable life included mistakes, failures, seasons of uncertainty, and moments of painful doubt. The difference was never perfection. It was correction. They adjusted. They learned. They returned to their principles again and again. Like a ship making small corrections across a vast ocean, they understood that tiny adjustments made consistently eventually determine the destination. Perhaps that is the most encouraging truth of all. You do not need to transform your entire future before tomorrow morning. You need only make the next wise decision. Then protect it, then repeat it. A single page becomes a library. A single seed becomes a forest. A single promise kept becomes a reputation. A single investment becomes the beginning of financial independence. A single act of kindness becomes a lifelong friendship. Nothing meaningful arrives all at once. Everything meaningful arrives through faithful accumulation. The ancient wealth secret was never locked inside hidden temples or buried beneath forgotten cities. It has always been quietly visible to anyone willing to observe. See value before others notice it. Protect your reputation more carefully than your possessions. Create more than you consume. Honor time as your most precious asset. Remain endlessly curious. Choose discipline over comfort. Build relationships before transactions. Pursue contribution before recognition. And remember that the greatest fortunes are ultimately measured not by what they gather, but by what they continue giving long after their creators have disappeared. One day, years from now, someone may benefit from a decision you make this week. Someone you will never meet. Someone who will never know your name. Perhaps that is the truest definition of wealth. To become the quiet reason another life becomes a little stronger. And if that happens, then you will have discovered what history's richest truly knew all along. Real wealth begins long before money, and its greatest rewards continue long after money is gone. There is one final truth that history whispers to anyone patient enough to listen. The world has always changed faster than most people expected. Empires that seemed permanent disappeared. Currencies that inspired unquestioned confidence eventually lost their value. Technologies that once looked miraculous became ordinary. Entire professions emerged while others quietly faded into history. Yet, through every transformation, certain people continued finding opportunity. Not because they predicted every event, because they prepared themselves to remain valuable regardless of the event. That distinction matters. Trying to predict every future change is impossible. Preparing yourself to adapt to change is achievable. The ancient merchant never knew exactly when storms would arrive. He simply built stronger ships. The wise farmer never controlled the weather. He improved the soil. The experienced craftsman never knew which customer would open the greatest opportunity. He treated every customer with excellence. Preparation has always been humanity's greatest answer to uncertainty. As you leave this journey, you may be tempted to search immediately for the next investment, the next strategy, the next opportunity. There is nothing wrong with that. But remember where every enduring fortune truly began. Not in the marketplace, inside the mind. The marketplace merely revealed what had already been developed in private. The investor who remains calm during panic did not discover discipline overnight. The entrepreneur who recognizes opportunity during uncertainty trained that perception over many years. The leader who inspires trust built that trust conversation by conversation. Every visible success has invisible roots. Protect those roots. Feed them daily. Never become so focused on collecting wealth that you neglect becoming the kind of person capable of carrying it wisely. Because wealth without wisdom creates anxiety. Wisdom without wealth still creates value. When wisdom and wealth walk together, they create freedom. Freedom to spend your mornings with intention instead of urgency. Freedom to choose meaningful work instead of desperate work. Freedom to help others without expecting immediate return. Freedom to leave every place slightly better than you found it. That freedom has always been the treasure hidden beneath every great fortune. There may come a day when markets fall. There may come a season when plans change. There may come moments when everything feels uncertain. If that day arrives, remember this. Your greatest asset has never been the number printed on a statement. It has been your ability to observe clearly, think independently, learn continuously, act with integrity, and remain patient while others surrender to fear. Those qualities cannot be inflated away. They cannot be stolen by changing trends. They cannot be replaced by technology. They remain yours for as long as you choose to strengthen them. Look back through history one final time. Across deserts walked merchants carrying dreams larger than their caravans. Across oceans sailed explorers guided only by stars and conviction. Across generations, parents sacrificed comfort so their children might inherit possibility instead of limitation. Across workshops, craftsmen shaped masterpieces no one believed possible when they began. Across libraries, quiet thinkers discovered ideas that eventually transformed nations. They lived in different centuries. They spoke different languages. They worshiped differently. They dressed differently. But they all understood one timeless principle. The future is not inherited. It is built. Stone by stone. Decision by decision. Day by day. You are building yours right now, not someday. Not when circumstances become perfect. With today's habits, today's conversations, today's choices. Every sunrise places another brick in the structure that will one day become your life. Build carefully, build honestly, build patiently. There will always be people chasing shortcuts. Let them run. There will always be people distracted by appearances. Wish them well. There will always be voices insisting that lasting success should happen instantly. Smile politely. History has already answered that argument. Everything truly valuable asks for time. The tallest oak began as an unseen acorn. The greatest river began as unnoticed drops. The strongest reputation began with one promise kept. The deepest wisdom began with one question honestly asked. The largest fortunes often began with one disciplined decision repeated until it became character. Character became reputation. Reputation attracted opportunity. Opportunity created abundance. Abundance, guided by purpose, became legacy. And legacy became the only form of wealth that time itself could not erase. As this audiobook comes to a close, do not allow these ideas to remain only pleasant thoughts. Carry one of them into tomorrow. Choose one habit to strengthen, one unnecessary expense to eliminate, one relationship to improve, one skill to deepen, 1 hour to reclaim from distraction, one promise to keep. Small actions are history's favorite building materials. If this journey has given you a new way of looking at wealth, I invite you to make a quiet commitment to yourself. Share in the comments the one ancient principle you intend to live by from this day forward. Your words may become the encouragement that another person needs to begin rebuilding their own future. And if you would like to continue exploring timeless ideas that strengthen your mind, your discipline, and your financial wisdom, stay with this community. Every journey toward lasting prosperity becomes easier when you travel alongside people who value growth over shortcuts. Remember this final thought whenever life becomes noisy. Gold changes hands. Empires rise and fall. Markets climb and collapse. Technology reshapes the world. But a disciplined mind, an honest heart, a curious spirit, and a life devoted to creating more value than it consumes remain priceless in every century. That was the ancient wealth secret. It still is. And now it belongs to you. The morning after a great decision is rarely dramatic. No orchestra announces that your future has begun to change. The sun rises exactly as it did yesterday. The streets are familiar. The work waiting for you has not disappeared. Your responsibilities remain. And yet something is profoundly different. The person meeting those responsibilities is no longer seeing the world through the same eyes. History is filled with moments that look completely ordinary while quietly becoming extraordinary. A young apprentice opening his workshop before dawn, a widow deciding to rebuild her family's business after believing everything had been lost, a scholar lighting another candle late into the night because one unanswered question refused to leave his mind, a sailor studying unfamiliar stars before setting course toward waters no one in his village believed were worth crossing. None of these moments looked historic. They became historic because they were repeated. One of the greatest misunderstandings about success is the belief that extraordinary people wake up feeling extraordinary. Most do not. They wake up feeling human, sometimes hopeful, sometimes uncertain, sometimes tired, sometimes afraid. The difference is not found inside their emotions. It is found inside their commitments. Feelings change with weather. Commitments survive seasons. An ancient craftsman once explained to his apprentice that excellence is never created on the day someone finally notices it. Excellence is created during the hundreds of days when nobody notices anything at all. The apprentice nodded politely, but he did not truly understand. Years later, after building a furniture admired across several kingdoms, he finally realized what his teacher had meant. The masterpiece had never been hidden inside the final piece. It had been hidden inside thousands of ordinary mornings when he chose precision over convenience. That lesson extends into every corner of life. Financial wisdom is built long before wealth appears. Emotional stability is built long before hardship arrives. Leadership is built long before people begin following. Confidence is built long before anyone calls you successful. The invisible always arrives first. The visible simply reveals what has already taken root. This is why comparisons are so misleading. You compare your visible beginning to another person's visible achievement. What you cannot compare are the invisible years, the disappointments they rarely discuss, the mistakes they quietly corrected, the evenings spent learning while others sought distraction, the opportunities they declined because they did not align with their principles. Every impressive life contains an invisible biography. History usually preserves only the final chapter. There is another quiet truth worth carrying with you. Wealth changes the questions people ask. At first, many ask, "How can I survive?" Then, "How can I become comfortable?" Eventually, "How can I become successful?" But the wisest eventually arrive at another question entirely. How can I become indispensable? Indispensable people are rarely unemployed for long. They are rarely forgotten. They create such remarkable value that replacing them becomes difficult, not because they guard information, because they continually expand their usefulness. Think of a physician whose calm reassures frightened families, an engineer who solves impossible problems without seeking attention, a teacher whose students continue thanking them decades after graduation, a business owner who treats every customer with uncommon respect. Their value extends beyond transactions. They become experiences people remember. That kind of value survives competition. It survives economic cycles. It survives technological change because it is deeply human. Machines may perform calculations faster, Software may automate repetitive tasks, but integrity cannot be automated. Wisdom cannot be downloaded. Judgment cannot be manufactured. Compassion cannot be mass-produced. The future will continue rewarding those who cultivate the qualities that remain uniquely human. Perhaps that is why history's richest lessons become more valuable, not less, as technology advances. When information becomes abundant, discernment becomes priceless. When speed becomes ordinary, thoughtful judgment becomes exceptional. When everyone has access to powerful tools, character becomes the true advantage. Imagine entering an ancient observatory. Above you stretches a sky untouched by city lights. An elderly astronomer studies the stars with remarkable patience. You ask him why he spends so many nights observing patterns that barely change. He smiles. The stars change very slowly, he says, but people become lost very quickly. Then he adds something unexpected. If you learn what remains constant, you will never fear what keeps changing. That may be one of the greatest financial lessons ever spoken. Study what remains constant: human nature, integrity, discipline, curiosity, patience, service. Long after today's headlines have been forgotten, these qualities will continue creating opportunity. Long after today's trends have disappeared, these principles will remain quietly effective. History does not reward people merely for being modern. It rewards those who understand what is timeless. As you continue your own journey, there will be moments when shortcuts appear irresistible. Someone will promise extraordinary rewards without corresponding effort. Someone will insist that principles are outdated. Someone will tell you that honesty is too expensive. Remember what every lasting civilization eventually discovered. Shortcuts often shorten the destination as well. The bridge built carelessly may stand for a season. The bridge built with excellence carries generations. Build for generations. Even if your work lasts only within your own family. Even if your influence reaches only a handful of people. Even if nobody writes your name in history. History itself is nothing more than countless ordinary lives lived with extraordinary intention. One person keeping their word. Another choosing courage over comfort. Another refusing to surrender after failure. Another planting trees whose fruit they would never personally harvest. Civilizations are built from individual character. Markets are built from individual trust. Families are built from individual sacrifice. Legacies are built from individual decisions repeated until they become tradition. Perhaps someone listening today will become the first person in their family to build lasting financial security. Perhaps another will repair a broken relationship that has carried pain across generations. Perhaps another will finally begin investing in knowledge instead of excuses. No one can predict which single decision will alter the future. That uncertainty should not discourage you. It should inspire you, because it means every ordinary day carries extraordinary possibility. And every wise decision, no matter how small it appears, may become the beginning of a story whose final chapter has not yet been written. There is another lesson hidden inside the oldest marketplaces that few people ever notice. Every successful trader eventually discovered that information loses value the moment everyone possesses it. By the time the entire marketplace agreed that a certain spice, fabric, or metal was valuable, the greatest opportunities had often already passed. The extraordinary profits belonged to those who recognized value while uncertainty still surrounded it. This was never about gambling. It was about observation. The careful merchant spent more time watching than speaking. He noticed which villages were growing. He noticed which roads became safer each season. He noticed changing weather patterns that affected harvests. He noticed subtle shifts in demand long before prices reflected them. Observation became foresight. Foresight became preparation. Preparation became prosperity. That sequence remains just as powerful today. Modern life surrounds us with endless opinions. Everyone has predictions. Everyone has certainty. Everyone claims to know what will happen next. History encourages a quieter approach. Observe first. Conclude later. The person who reacts to every headline eventually loses the ability to think independently. The person who studies long patterns instead of daily noise begins seeing opportunities invisible to the crowd. Imagine walking through an enormous forest. One traveler looks only at the leaves beneath his feet. Another climbs a nearby hill before choosing a direction. The second traveler reaches the destination more often because perspective changes decisions. Distance creates wisdom. This is why stepping away from constant noise has become one of the greatest competitive advantages of the modern age. Silence allows patterns to emerge. Noise hides them. The wealthiest minds throughout history deliberately protected periods of uninterrupted thinking, not because they disliked activity, because they understood that clear thinking produces better action than constant action produces clear thinking. There is tremendous courage in refusing to hurry your conclusions. Suppose two investors stand before the same opportunity. One becomes excited within minutes. He imagines immediate success. He rushes forward because excitement feels like certainty. The other becomes curious instead. She asks difficult questions. What assumptions am I making? What risks have I overlooked? If I am wrong, what would that look like? What evidence would change my mind? Many people mistake caution for fear. It is often wisdom wearing humble clothes. Ancient navigators trusted neither optimism nor pessimism. They trusted careful preparation. Before leaving harbor, they inspected sails. They calculated provisions. They studied currents. Hope alone could not carry a ship across an ocean. Preparation transformed hope into possibility. Your own future deserves the same respect. Prepare your finances before opportunity arrives. Prepare your character before influence grows. Prepare your habits before success demands consistency. Prepare your mind before uncertainty tests your confidence. Preparation often appears invisible until the moment it becomes invaluable. Think about a musician performing before thousands of people. The audience applauds the final performance. Very few applaud the countless solitary hours spent practicing scales, correcting mistakes, and repeating difficult passages until they became effortless. The applause belongs to one evening. The excellence belongs to years. Financial mastery follows exactly the same rhythm. People admire freedom. Few admire budgeting. People admire successful businesses. Few admire the years spent understanding customers. People admire confident leaders. Few admire the decades spent learning from failure. Visible rewards are usually delayed payments for invisible discipline. This truth should bring encouragement rather than frustration, because it means today's quiet effort is never wasted. Every page studied adds another layer to your understanding. Every thoughtful conversation improves your judgment. Every unnecessary expense avoided strengthens future freedom. Every promise kept strengthens future trust. Nothing meaningful is ever isolated. Everything connects. The book you read today influences the conversation you have next month. That conversation introduces someone who opens a new opportunity 2 years later. That opportunity changes the direction of your family for decades. Looking backward, the path appears obvious. Living forward, it rarely does. This is why faith in the process matters so deeply. Not blind faith. Earned faith. The kind that grows after watching small disciplines repeatedly create meaningful outcomes. History quietly teaches another remarkable lesson. Many of the greatest opportunities first appeared disguised as inconvenience. Learning a difficult skill is inconvenient. Saving money when others are spending freely feels inconvenient. Speaking honestly when dishonesty seems easier is inconvenient. Beginning again after failure is inconvenient. Yet these inconveniences often become tomorrow's advantages. Comfort seeks immediate relief. Wisdom seeks lasting strength. There is a profound difference. Imagine lifting a heavy stone every morning. The first week feels exhausting. The second becomes manageable. Months later, what once seemed impossible becomes ordinary. Strength did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated quietly. Your financial judgment develops exactly the same way. Your emotional resilience develops exactly the same way. Your ability to recognize value develops exactly the same way. Slowly enough that you barely notice. Steadily enough that one day you realize you have become the person you once hoped to meet. That transformation is one of life's greatest rewards. Not merely possessing more, becoming more. Because the person you become ultimately determines the life you build. Money amplifies that person. Opportunity reveals that person. Adversity tests that person. Legacy remembers that person. And when history quietly looks back across generations, it rarely asks how much someone owned. It asks a far more enduring question. What kind of future became possible because they were here? That is the question worth carrying into tomorrow. Not as pressure, as purpose. Because purpose gives ordinary days extraordinary meaning, and extraordinary meaning has always been one of the rarest forms of wealth any human being can possess. There is a story that has appeared in different forms across many civilizations. An elderly stonecutter spent his entire life shaping blocks for temples that would never bear his name. Visitors praised the finished buildings. Poets celebrated the kings who commissioned them. Travelers admired the towering columns. No one spoke of the man whose careful hands made every stone fit perfectly. A young apprentice once asked him whether it bothered him that history would forget his name. The old craftsman smiled. "If the temple stands for 1,000 years," he replied, "my name is already inside every stone." There is profound wisdom hidden in that answer. The modern world often encourages us to chase visibility. History encourages us to pursue significance. Visibility is temporary. Significance endures. One depends on attention, the other depends on contribution. Ask yourself a simple question. Would you rather be remembered for attracting attention or for creating value? The answer shapes every decision that follows. Many people exhaust themselves trying to appear successful. Very few dedicate equal energy to becoming successful. The difference may seem small. It changes everything. Appearing successful invites comparison. Becoming successful requires growth. Comparison depends upon other people. Growth depends upon your own discipline. Comparison steals gratitude. Growth multiplies it. This is why the wisest people often appear surprisingly uninterested in competing with everyone around them. Their greatest competition exists between yesterday's version of themselves and today's. Every improvement matters, even the smallest one, especially the smallest one, because tiny improvements possess an extraordinary characteristic. They rarely attract resistance. A person may struggle to transform an entire life in 1 month, but reading 10 thoughtful pages each day feels manageable. Saving a small percentage of every paycheck feels manageable. Walking a little farther each morning feels manageable. Writing 1 page, learning 1 lesson, making 1 wiser decision. Life changes quietly when improvement becomes ordinary. There is another illusion that history repeatedly exposes. Many people believe confidence comes before action. The opposite is almost always true. Action creates evidence. Evidence builds confidence. Imagine a child learning to walk. No parent expects perfection after the first attempt. Falling is not considered failure. It is considered practice. Somehow, adults often forget this principle. We expect immediate mastery. We become embarrassed by mistakes. We hesitate because we fear looking inexperienced. Yet every master once looked exactly like a beginner. The experienced merchant once completed an awkward first negotiation. The respected physician once treated a first patient. The accomplished architect once drew uncertain sketches. The trusted leader once questioned every decision. Growth has never required perfection. It has always required persistence. Persistence carries another remarkable gift. It teaches discernment. After enough experience, you begin recognizing patterns impossible to learn from theory alone. You discover which opportunities deserve patience, which people deserve trust, which habits deserve protection, which distractions deserve immediate refusal. Judgment matures through lived experience. Books can guide you. Mentors can encourage you. History can illuminate the path. But eventually, every person must walk their own road. That is where wisdom takes root. Not merely inside ideas, inside decisions. There is an image worth carrying with you. Picture an archer preparing to release an arrow. Before drawing the bow, he chooses the target. Only afterward does he apply strength. Many people reverse this order. They work harder without first deciding where they truly wish to go. Effort without direction becomes exhaustion. Direction gives meaning to effort. This is why clear values matter so deeply. Values become the target toward which every decision travels. If wealth is your only target, satisfaction may remain distant regardless of how much you accumulate. If freedom is your target, your decisions begin changing. If contribution is your target, your relationships deepen. If wisdom is your target, every experience becomes a teacher. The target determines the journey. History offers countless examples of individuals who reached extraordinary financial success only to discover they had neglected health, family, character, or peace. Their accounts expanded while their lives quietly contracted. The ancient wealth secret has never encouraged that imbalance. True prosperity is broad. It includes financial strength. It also includes emotional stability, physical vitality, meaningful relationships, intellectual curiosity, spiritual depth, a peaceful conscience. Remove any one of these long enough, and even remarkable wealth begins to feel incomplete. The richest life is not necessarily the one containing the most possessions. It is the one requiring the fewest compromises of what truly matters. That realization often arrives later than people expect. Some discover it after achieving every goal they once believed would satisfy them. Others recognize it much earlier and quietly reshape their priorities before success arrives. Both journeys lead toward the same truth. Money is an extraordinary servant. It becomes a difficult master. Let it serve your values. Never allow it to replace them. As the years unfold, people will remember very little of what you purchased. They will remember how you treated them, how you responded under pressure, whether your promises meant something, whether your success made you kinder or merely louder, whether your influence created hope or fear. These memories become the true inheritance you leave behind. Long after possessions have changed owners, character continues speaking through the lives you touched. Perhaps that is why the oldest wisdom has survived every civilization that attempted to outgrow it. Principles do not age, only circumstances do. Integrity remains valuable regardless of currency. Discipline remains powerful regardless of technology. Patience remains rewarding regardless of market cycles. Generosity remains meaningful regardless of economic conditions. Truth remains dependable regardless of public opinion. The world will continue changing. Share in the comments the principle that resonated with you the most and the one action you will begin today. Someone reading your words may discover the encouragement they have been searching for. And if you want to continue exploring timeless ideas about wealth, discipline, history, and personal mastery, subscribe and return for the next audiobook. Every lesson builds upon the last, and every step forward makes the next one easier. Remember this above everything else. Gold can be stolen, businesses can fail, markets can crash, empires can disappear, but a disciplined mind cannot be confiscated. An honest reputation cannot be bought. A lifetime of wisdom cannot be erased. And a person who has learned how to create value will never truly be poor. That is the secret history has whispered across thousands of years. The richest people were never simply those who possessed the most. They were the ones who understood that real wealth begins inside the mind, grows through disciplined action, expands through service to others, and becomes immortal through the lives it changes. May you become one of those builders. May your work outlast your fears. May your character outshine your circumstances. May your wisdom grow faster than your wealth. And may your wealth always remain a faithful servant of a meaningful life. Because when the final chapter of your own story is written, the greatest measure of your success will never be the fortune you accumulated. It will be the future you helped create. Thank you for sharing this journey. Until our next audiobook, continue building patiently. Continue learning relentlessly. Continue serving generously. And remember, the oldest wealth secret has never belonged to the past. It belongs to every person who chooses to live it today.